I'll never forget the smell of cigarette smoke that clung to my ex-wife's purse the night she finally walked into the hospital. That purse carried the insulin pen that could have saved our daughter's life, and yet when she tossed it at the nurse like a used napkin, it was already too late, was gone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you had asked me 10 years ago what kind of mother Rachel would be, I would have sworn she'd be the best. She was beautiful, charismatic, the kind of woman who lit up a room. When we were dating, everyone said I'd won the lottery. She smiled like she had a secret, and maybe she always did. In those early years, we looked like a perfect family on the outside. Suburban house, a golden retriever named Max, our daughter with her big hazel eyes and the wildest curls you've ever seen. I took photos of everything on her first bike, dressed as a bumblebee for Halloween, Rachel holding her hand at preschool orientation. If you flip through those albums now, you'd think we were the model family. But if you look closely, really closely, you'll notice the cracks. In the corner of one photo, Rachel's wearing glass on the porch railing while tried to balance on training wheels. In another, Rachel at the slot machines on a girls' night that seemed to happen every weekend. And in my memory, the sound of her laughter too loud, too high-pitched when she was on a winning streak. I used to tell myself it was harmless. Everyone deserves to unwind, right? Everyone has a hobby, but her hobby always costs money and it always came first. Was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 6. I'll never forget sitting in that sterile white doctor's office holding her tiny hand while they explained insulin pumps, blood sugar ranges, ketones. Rachel nodded through the instructions, even took notes like she was the perfect mother in a medical drama. She even made a big show of carrying his backup insulin pen everywhere like a trophy to prove her competence. To the court, to her friends, to anyone who might doubt her, Rachel was the picture of a prepared, protective mom. But I saw the truth when the cameras weren't rolling. Sometimes the pen stayed in her purse while she played the machines, hours ticking by. Sometimes she'd forget to pack snacks for sleepovers, or she'd brush off my reminders with a sharp, "Stop treating me like an idiot, I know what I'm doing." And yet every time I considered speaking up, I swallowed the words. Why? Because the court always said the same thing: children need their mothers. I was the father, the weekend caretaker, the one who packed extra supplies in his backpack just in case. But Rachel had the narrative, and in custody hearings, narratives matter more than reality. The perfect picture was starting to fray, and I felt it in my bones. The last Saturday I picked up from Rachel's apartment, she had a bruise on her lip. "What happened, kiddo?" I asked, brushing her curls back. She shrugged. Mom said I tripped. Her eyes flickered to the floor, and that was enough. Didn't lie, she avoided. At 8 years old, she already knew the art of silence. Later that night, after she fell asleep on the couch with Max curled at her feet, I noticed something else. A faint scrape along her knee, half hidden by her pants. A week before, it had been a cracked rib, which Rachel blamed on roughhousing at the playground. How many accidents does it take before you stop believing in accidents? I didn't know the answer, but my gut told me something was deeply wrong. Sunday night, I was folding laundry when the phone rang. It was the sleepover mom's best friend's mother. Her voice shook. "She's here with us tonight, but her pump just failed. Her sugar at 450 and climbing. We don't know what to do." My stomach dropped. That number should never be above 180. "Where's the backup insulin?" I asked, already grabbing my car keys. "She doesn't have any." Rachel said everything was in the pump. That's when the world tilted, because Rachel always carried the pen in her purse. She bragged about it in court, showed it off like proof of her devotion, but where was it now? I called her immediately. Casino noise roared through the phone before her voice did. "Pump failed," I shouted. "She needs insulin now. You're only 15 minutes away from the sleepover house." Her response, a laugh. "I just hit an all-time record." "Our daughter's dying," I yelled. "You need to leave now." There was a pause, then her voice, tight and annoyed. "I'm at the high roller table. I'm down 3 grand. I need to win it back." My hands shook on the steering wheel as I floored the gas. I was 45 minutes away. She was 15. The math was unbearable. That night blurred into flashing highway lights, frantic calls, and the taste of copper in my mouth from biting my lips so hard. By the time I reached the sleepover house, was unconscious on the bathroom floor. Pale lips, vomit on her shirt. The paramedics were already there. One looked up at me grimly. "Blood sugar's too high for our meter to read. We need insulin immediately." "She has it," I whispered. "Her mom has it." But Rachel didn't come, not for another 42 minutes. People always ask me what I felt in that moment, watching them load limp body into the ambulance. Was it rage, terror? It was both and something colder, a clarity so sharp it cut through the noise. The picture-perfect family was dead, the cracks had split wide open, and the person holding the purse with the cure, my ex-wife, wasn't racing to save her daughter. She was still at the casino rolling dice while life hung by a thread. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an accident, this was a choice. People think tragedies happen in a single moment, a car crash, a heart attack, a sudden phone call in the night, but that's not the truth. Tragedies grow in the dark, piece by piece, like cracks in glass spreading until the whole thing shatters. Looking back, the cracks with Rachel had been there for years. I grew up in a family where loyalty was everything. My dad always said, blood is thicker than water. But Rachel twisted that lesson into something toxic. Her version of loyalty meant covering for her, protecting her image, even when the truth screamed otherwise. The first time I saw it clearly was when I was just 3. We were at the park and Rachel had been sipping wine from a stainless steel coffee mug, tripped near the slide and split her lip. Blood everywhere, the kind of scene that makes every parent's stomach drop. I panicked, grabbed napkins from the snack stand, and begged Rachel to help. But she was too busy fumbling with her purse, trying to hide the mug before other parents noticed. "Don't make a scene," she hissed, shoving it deep into her bag. "Rachel, she's bleeding." "And you're overreacting. Kids fall, that's what they do." I cleaned face myself, my hands shaking, while Rachel reapplied her lipstick like nothing had happened. To everyone else, we looked like a team, only I knew the truth. It became a pattern, needed structure, consistent blood sugar checks, snacks timed like clockwork, but Rachel thrived on chaos. She'd forget, dismiss, or outright lie. Once Swin was 5, she spent the night at Rachel's sister's house. The next morning, I got a frantic call, was vomiting, weak, barely able to stand. When I rushed over, her glucose monitor read nearly 400. I found her little backpack in the corner, no snacks, no backup insulin pen, nothing. Rachel had been too busy arguing with her sister about who owed who money from the night before at the casino, and when I confronted her, she laughed. "She's fine now, isn't she? Stop acting like I'm some monster." That's how Rachel operated. She turned every mistake into a joke, every failure into my overreaction, and I let her, because I wanted to have her mother. But favoritism, that's what cut deepest. Rachel adored when there was an audience. At school functions, she was the mom with the loudest applause, the mom handing out cupcakes, the mom recording every moment on her phone. But at home, became a burden when her needs clashed with Rachel's fun. I'll never forget the night Rachel hosted a poker game at our house. Was Seven sitting at the kitchen table, pale and sluggish? She tugged at Rachel's sleeve. Mommy, I don't feel good. Rachel didn't even look down. She was too busy shuffling cards and laughing with her friends. Go lie down, sweetie, daddy will deal with it. Carried to bed, tested her blood sugar, and found it dangerously low. I spoon-fed her glucose gel while Rachel whooped in the living room, winning another hand. Later, when I begged her to take this seriously, she sneered. You just love playing the hero, don't you? Makes you feel important. Oh, it made me feel scared that one day I wouldn't catch it in time. Her secrets were everywhere if you knew where to look. Credit card bills hidden in kitchen drawers, ATM receipts crumpled in her jacket pockets. She'd vanish for hours with excuses that never made sense. Target run, would say. Would Target is open until 2 a.m., I asked once. She didn't answer, just slammed the bedroom door so hard the picture frames rattled. Tried to set boundaries, tried therapy, tried ultimatums, but Rachel always turned it back on me. You're controlling, you're paranoid, you're making me the villain. And maybe I believed her for too long, because love makes fools out of all of us. The custody hearings were the worst. Rachel had a way of performing for the judge, soft voice, crocodile tears, carefully rehearsed stories. She always carried that insulin pen in her purse like it was a sacred relic. She'd pull it out with trembling hands and say, see, I never go anywhere without this. The judge would nod, reassured, and I'd sit there biting my tongue while rage burned holes in my stomach. Because I knew the truth, she treated that pen like a prop, not a lifeline. But the court didn't care about my truth, they cared about appearances, they cared about mothers. And so every weekend I handed over praying Rachel would keep her safe, praying the cracks wouldn't widen. Here's the thing about secrets, they don't stay buried forever. One night came home from Rachel's with a new vocabulary word. She whispered it to me in the dark as I tucked her into bed. Daddy, what's a comp card? My blood ran cold, I knew that word. It meant complimentary perks casinos give to high rollers, drinks, meals, hotel rooms, all freebies to keep gamblers hooked. Where did you hear that, I asked. Mommy said she got us free dinner with her comp card, she said she's lucky. Lucky, that's what Rachel called it, not addiction, not obsession, luck. Kissed forehead, my chest aching. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that luck isn't real and her mother's gambling was a game? Favoritism wasn't just about it was about Rachel herself. She loved the spotlight, loved playing the victim when things went wrong. Once, after I ended up in the ER with a sugar spike, Rachel cried louder than did. She wailed in the waiting room about how hard it was being a single mom, how nobody understood her sacrifices. Meanwhile, I sat at its bedside, holding her hand while machines beeped, watching my little girl sleep with an oxygen tube in her nose while her mother rehearsed her martyrdom outside. And I realized something then. Rachel didn't just want to be seen as a good mother, she wanted to be for the bare minimum. But the cracks turned into a canyon, the night's pump failed at that sleepover. When the sleepover mom called, terrified, I knew instantly what had happened. Rachel hadn't packed the backup insulin, she hadn't even considered it, because in her mind, the pump was enough, the purse was enough, the performance was enough. But it was, and blood sugar wasn't just a number anymore, it was a countdown. I can still hear the question the sleepover mom asked me, her voice trembling through the phone. What do we do if she doesn't wake up? I had no answer. That night wasn't the beginning of tragedy, it was the climax of years of denial, favoritism, and secret stacking like a house of cards. And when it all came crashing down, Rachel wasn't there to catch. She was at a blackjack table, chasing luck that had never been real. And in that moment, I knew the truth I'd been avoiding for years. Rachel's love for gambling had always been stronger than her love for her daughter. The night of the sleepover changed everything, but the days that followed lit the fuse. For the first 48 hours, I barely slept. I lived on coffee, adrenaline, and the sound of shallow breathing in the ICU. Machines hummed and beeped around her like a cruel lullaby. Every time her chest rose and fell, I whispered thank you under my breath as if gratitude alone could keep her alive. Rachel visited once in those 2 days. She stumbled in late, reeking of cigarettes and wine, tossed her hair, and acted like nothing was wrong. She told the doctor she was managing just fine and insisted the pump was faulty. She said it with such conviction that for a moment I thought maybe I'd imagined everything, maybe the casino, the ignored calls, the purse full of insulin. But then I looked at my phone, 52 unanswered calls, timestamps one after another like gravestones on a digital screen, proof. When Rachel left that night, I followed her into the hallway. You left her to die. She froze, her hand tightening on her purse strap. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic, she was unconscious, her blood sugar was over 500, and you, my voice cracked, you chose blackjack over your daughter. Rachel's eyes narrowed, lips curling into that familiar sneer. If you hadn't moved 45 minutes away, you could gotten there sooner, this is on you. That's when I realized she wasn't going to break, not with guilt, not with fear. She had built her own story, and in it she was always the victim. 3 days later, kidneys started failing. Dialysis, tubes, more machines. The doctor said her odds were slipping by the hour. I sat by her bed, holding her tiny hand, feeling the coolness of her skin. I whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep. I'll fix this, I'll make sure she pays. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about negligence anymore. This was about a pattern, a lifetime of cracks that had finally split open. That week, the house became a war zone. I was either at the hospital or home picking, fists clenched, running through conversations I wanted to have with Rachel. I punched holes in the drywall of my garage, bloodied my knuckles just to quiet the rage. I made lists in my phone. Sleepover mom's number. Paramedics' names. Casino's hotline. Doctor's badge ID. Call log screenshots, every ignored voicemail. Evidence, that word became my oxygen. The first confrontation came when the police showed up at my door. 2 officers in pressed uniforms, notebooks out. The older one asked me to walk through everything that happened. I told them everything's numbers, Rachel's location, the casino noise in the background of her calls. I showed them the proof on my phone, 52 calls unanswered, declined, while my daughter's body poisoned itself from the inside. The younger officer's jaw tightened. The older one scribbled notes, then looked at me with sympathy that felt like pity. We'll need to talk to the other witnesses. Other witnesses, as if I wasn't enough, as if wasn't enough. When the officers left, the silence in the house pressed down on me like a weight. I called my sister, told her might not make it, and begged her to stand with me against Rachel. She cried, said she was sorry, but then, I don't want to get involved in your problems. My brother said the same, my mother too. Rachel's family didn't even answer. I realized then I was alone. The only ally I had came unexpectedly. Friend's mom, the one who hosted the sleepover, texted me to meet at a coffee shop. When I arrived, she slid her phone across the table. Photos, timestamps on the bathroom floor, pale and fatting. Text between her and her husband debating whether to call 911, her unanswered calls to Rachel. Her eyes were red. I'll testify to anything you need. That was the first time in days I felt less than powerless. Someone else had seen it too. Someone else was willing to tell the truth. Till every hour that passed felt like sand running out of an hourglass, and I couldn't escape one question circling in my head like a vulture. How do you fight someone who would rather gamble than save her own child? The second confrontation came at the funeral home, hadn't made it. Rachel arrived 45 minutes late, stumbling in while the director showed me casket options. She wrinkled her nose at the prices and snapped, just cremate her. No service, she won't know the difference. I almost hit her. I almost broke my vow to keep everything legal. Instead, I paid for everything myself, teeth clenched, just to stop the screaming match. At the funeral, Rachel showed up 20 minutes late again, drunk. She staggered to the podium and slurred through a speech about being a devoted mother. Half the words didn't make sense. My family shifted uncomfortably. Rachel's family looked at the floor. I sat in the front row, hands folded, letting everyone see who she really was. The third confrontation came in court. Rachel filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was harassing her with threatening phone calls. Lies, I hadn't contacted her once since the funeral, but I still had to hire a lawyer, draining money I didn't have. The judge dismissed most of her claims, but ordered all communication between us to go through attorneys. No more phone calls, no more texts, no more chances for me to scream the truth in her face. At first, it felt like a loss, but then I realized maybe it was protection from my own rage. The escalation kept building. CPS launched an investigation. The lead investigator told me Rachel's apartment reeked of alcohol and smoke, with gambling receipts scattered on the table, but no food in the fridge. The Gaming Commission started reviewing casino policies after I filed a formal complaint, pushing them to explain why they hadn't forced Rachel to leave with her daughter's insulin. And then came the subpoenas, the depositions, the endless paperwork. My dining room turned into a war room, walls plastered with timelines and evidence charts. Every step pulled me further from grief and deeper into obsession. One night, after hours of staring at its photo, I found myself driving toward Rachel's apartment. Engine humming, rage thrumming through my veins. I wanted to hurt her, to make her feel every second of the pain she caused. I made it 3 blocks before I pulled over shaking, called my therapist, who talked me down until my hands stopped trembling. Justice, he reminded me, not revenge. But in that moment, I wasn't sure I could tell the difference anymore. The final confrontation of that chapter came at Rachel's deposition. She sat across from me, smirking, coached by her lawyer. She everything at first, said she didn't know was that sick, said she thought the sleepover mom was exaggerating. Then she slipped. Even if I knew I'm not a doctor, how was I supposed to know it was that serious? The court reporter's fingers flew across the keys, capturing every damning word. Rachel tried to backtrack, but my lawyer just leaned forward. So you admit you knew your daughter was having issues and you still chose to stay at the casino? Her face went red. I had plans, important plans. The silence in that room was louder than any scream. By the time I walked out of that deposition, I knew the truth was finally on paper, in black and white, not just in my head, not just in my grief. But truth alone doesn't guarantee justice, and Rachel still had her games to play. Because 2 weeks later, her lawyer filed a countersuit, emotional distress, defamation, harassment. $200,000. There's a moment when grief stops feeling like sadness and starts feeling like static. Not tears, not screaming, just a hum under your skin, a vibration that won't stop. By the time the civil case was moving forward, that's all I felt, static. But the night of the shocking incident cut through everything. It made the static explode. The day started with a phone call from my lawyer. His voice was steady, but I could hear the fatigue. "We've got Rachel's phone records," he said, "and the casino data. You need to come in." When I arrived, papers were spread across his desk. Call logs, transaction records, timestamps. He tapped his pen against one line after another. "See here, 11:47 p.m. your call declined. At 11:48, she placed a $200 bet at the blackjack table. Another line, 12:05 a.m. your voicemail declined. At 12:06, she ordered champagne from the bar." And on and on. Each ignored call lined up perfectly with a casino action. Declined calls followed by bets, drinks, cash outs. The proof was undeniable. She wasn't just unavailable, she was actively rejecting me while my daughter's body was shutting down. I felt my stomach twist. My hands gripped the edge of the desk until my knuckles went white. "She killed her," I whispered. "Not in this is as damning as it gets." That night, I went home and spread the papers across my dining table. The house was silent except for Max pecking at my feet, whining softly like he sensed the storm inside me. I stared at the timeline, every call log highlighted in yellow, every casino action circled in red. Death wasn't an accident. It was a chain reaction of choices Rachel made while pretending to be a mother. And then my phone buzzed, a message from the sleepover mom. She just came to my house, she threatened me, said I better change my story or she'll ruin me. Attached was a doorbell camera clip. Rachel's voice was slurred, but the words were sharp. "If you testify, I'll make your life hell." I watched it 3 times, my pulse hammered so loud it drowned out everything else. Rachel wasn't just reckless, she was desperate, dangerous. The police charged her with witness tampering the next morning. For the first time, it felt like the system might finally be on my side. But that same night, I made a mistake. I couldn't sleep. Sfoto stared back at me from the nightstand, her gap-toothed smile frozen in time. The static inside me had turned into fire. I poured whiskey into a glass, then another. Hours blurred. And suddenly I was in my car again, engine running, Rachel's address glowing on my GPS. I don't remember turning the key. I don't remember pulling onto the street. I just remember gripping the wheel, imagining her face when I showed up at her door. 3 blocks in, I slammed on the brakes. My chest was heaving, vision blurry. I pulled over, shaking so hard that rattled. I called my therapist at 2 in the morning. She answered groggy but calm. "Tell me where you are." I poured it out, everything I wanted to do, everything I was afraid I couldn't stop myself from doing. She listened, breathing steady, anchoring me back to reality. "Justice, not revenge," she whispered. "Forsake justice." By the time I hung up, the whiskey haze had broken, replaced by shame. I drove home and poured every bottle down the sink. My hands were still trembling when I whispered to Spicture, "I'll get justice the right way, I promise." The shocking moment came 2 weeks later in the courtroom. Rachel was on the stand, testifying in the civil case. She wore a navy blazer, hair perfectly styled as if clothes could cover the rot beneath. Her lawyer guided her through rehearsed lines. She talked about how hard it was being a single mother, how the pump had malfunctioned, how she was devastated by his death. And then asked the question that sliced everything open. Mrs. Beckett, at any point did you receive urgent calls from your ex-husband while you were at the casino that night? She hesitated. I don't remember. Slid the call log across the table. 52 calls, all declined, due to I declining them. Rachel's jaw clenched. I had plans, I was busy. Busy's voice rose. Your daughter was dying and you were busy. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Rachel snapped, her composure crumbling. He's exaggerating. I can't just drop everything for every little thing. I had money on the line. The words hung in the air like poison. One juror actually covered her mouth, another shook his head in disgust. For a second I couldn't breathe. She had said it out loud under oath. Not an accident, not confusion, a choice. The courtroom erupted. The judge pounded his gavel, calling for order. Rachel's lawyer scrambled, trying to spin her outburst as emotional distress, but the damage was done. Every eye in that room had seen the truth. Rachel had chosen gambling over her daughter's life. And yet here's the part that haunts me. She didn't even look ashamed. Her face was red with anger, not guilt. She glared at me like I was the villain. After court recessed, I stepped outside into the cold air. My hands were shaking, but not from rage this time, from clarity. The shocking moment wasn't her outburst, it was my realization. She would never admit it, not to the court, not to me, not even to herself. In her world, she wasn't the mother who gambled away her child's life. She was the victim, always the victim. And that terrified me more than anything, because how do you fight someone who believes their own lies? That night, I sat at my dining table surrounded by papers, photos, timelines, my war room, and I understood something I hadn't before. This fight wasn't about money. Rachel had no assets. It wasn't even about punishment, prison, probation, community service. None of it could bring back. This fight was about truth, making sure the record showed exactly what she did, so that when his name was spoken in the future, it wasn't just in whispers of tragedy, it was a warning, a line in history. Rachel Beckett, the mother who gambled while her daughter died. And then came the call that set everything spinning again. It was Damon Hunt, the district attorney. His voice was low, serious. We're reopening the criminal investigation, he said. Based on new evidence, we're considering negligent homicide charges. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Negligent homicide, real charges, jail time. The static inside me surged, almost dizzying. Do you think you can convict her? I asked. There was a long pause then. We'll try, but these cases are hard. Don't expect fast results. I hung up and stared at its photo on the wall, my daughter's smile frozen in time. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel before. Hope. Hospitals have a smell you can't forget. Antiseptic, plastic, that faint metallic tang of blood even when no blood is visible. I used to hate visiting hospitals. Now I could walk every hallway of the ICU blindfolded. Every tile, every beep, every sigh of a ventilator is burned into me. After Rachel's courtroom outburst, I went back to the hospital, not because it was still there, but because I needed the records. Proof, the kind of proof nobody could twist or excuse. The clerk at Medical Records gave me the standard line, 2 weeks for processing. But when I said my daughter died because her mother refused to bring insulin, the clerk disappeared into the back. 20 minutes later, she returned with a heavy folder. I sat in my car in the parking lot and opened it like it contained the secrets of the universe. In a way, it did. The EMS report was first, words stamped in black ink that cut deeper than knives. Blood glucose, 600 beyond meter limit. Patient unresponsive. Recommendation, immediate insulin administration required. Then the intake notes. Severe diabetic. Kidneys failing. Organs shutting down. Finally, the doctor's notes, the part that made my vision blur. With prompt insulin administration within 30 minutes of pump failure, patient had 95% chance of full recovery. Delay of over 2 hours resulted in irreversible damage. 95%, my little girl could have survived, she should have survived. Instead, she spent her last conscious moments vomiting on a bathroom floor while her mother chased blackjack wins. I everything 3 times, one set for one for CPS, one for the district attorney. The originals went into a fireproof box at home. But it wasn't just about protecting evidence, it was about making it real. Every page, every timestamp was an anchor, proof that I was crazy, proof that Rachel's negligence wasn't just bad luck. 2 days later called me into his office. Papers were spread across the conference table like a crime scene. The casino's transaction logs, Rachel's phone records, my call history. His wife and paralegal sat beside him with a yellow legal pad, jotting every detail. Lakir said, pointing to the timeline chart we'd built together, at 12:15 a.m., your daughter's friend's mom texts you that is unconscious. At the same moment, Rachel is still placing bets. 30 minutes later, Rachel orders another drink, all while her daughter's in. He tapped the final line with his pen. By 1:20 a.m., she finally leaves the casino. By then, organs are already shutting down. Whispered, it's airtight. But airtight evidence doesn't bring peace. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I heard the hospital machines in my head, the endless beeping, the rise and fall of alarms. I remembered the cold of his hand in mine, how small her fingers felt. I remembered her curls plastered to her forehead with sweat. And I remembered the doctor's voice when he told me, we'll need to start dialysis. Her kidneys are functioning at 40%. 40%, my daughter reduced to a fraction. I couldn't stop replaying it over and over like a movie stuck on loop. The autopsy report arrived a week later. I sat at my kitchen table, pen ready, as if taking notes could numb the blow. Cause of death, complications from diabetic due to lack of insulin. It was official, the state had written it down. Rachel's negligence wasn't just my word, it was the medical examiner's conclusion. I felt something shift in me then, not relief, not closure, something colder, focus. When I delivered copies of the report to, he looked me in the eye. This changes everything. It doesn't just support negligence, it proves causation. Her actions directly caused death. But Rachel didn't crumble, she doubled down. On social media, she spun lies. That the pump had malfunctioned. That I lived too far away. That the sleepover mom hadn't done enough. She posted photos of herself crying, long captions about being a misunderstood mother. Some people even bought it. Comments of sympathy, stay strong, you're so brave. I every single one added them to the evidence folder. Meanwhile, I kept meeting with my therapist. Week after week, she pushed me to find purpose beyond revenge, but it was hard when every detail of the hospital was carved into me. The ICU doctor's words haunted me. With insulin within 30 minutes, she would have survived. I timed everything I did: shower 12 minutes, commute 26 minutes, making dinner 34 minutes. I measured my life in 30-minute increments, each one a reminder of the window Rachel wasted. The hospital bills arrived, thick envelopes stacked like bricks in my mailbox. Tens of thousands of dollars, dialysis, ICU stay, medication, scans. Money for a fight didn't survive. I sold my motorcycle, my tools, even my father's watch, the one I'd planned to give on her 18th birthday. Each sale felt like ripping away another piece of myself. But I told myself it was all for her, for justice. Then came the day that shattered me all over again. I was back at the hospital, not for records this time, but because the EMS chief agreed to meet me. He walked me through the report step by step. He showed me the monitor readings, the oxygen levels, the timestamps. Then he said the words I'll never forget. Sir, if she had received insulin before we arrived, she'd be alive. We don't carry it, we're not allowed, it has to come from a parent. A parent? And Rachel had it in her purse. That night I dreamed of, she was sitting at the kitchen table coloring with her markers. She looked up at me, eyes bright, and asked, Daddy, why didn't Mom come? I woke up drenched in sweat, tears soaking the pillow. I had no answer. The medical evidence was piling up, each page a weapon, but weapons mean nothing if you can't wield them. Rachel still walked free, still spun her lies, still painted herself as a victim. One afternoon said, we need more than paper, we need people, witnesses. So when I drove to the sleepover Mom's house, she sat trembling at her kitchen table, signing page after page of a sworn affidavit, every detail of that night: vomiting, fatting, Rachel refusing to answer calls. Her husband signed too, then recorded them on video, recounting everything. When it was done, the mom gripped my hand. We'll stand with you, whatever it takes. Her words were a lifeline. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in the fight. But even with witnesses, even with doctors, even with reports, the question gnawed at me. Would the truth ever be enough to make her pay? The static inside me roared louder with every passing day. The hospital records, the x-rays, the autopsy, they weren't just evidence. They were reminders of every second Rachel chose not to act. And I knew this was only the beginning, because Rachel wasn't done fighting either. She was about to make her boldest, most desperate move yet. Grief isolates you. It's like standing in the middle of a crowded room with a megaphone, screaming while everyone pretends not to hear. After his funeral, I thought my family would rally around me. My sister, my brother, my mom, they all said they were sorry, they all said they loved. But when I mentioned going after Rachel, their voices changed. Quiet, hesitant. Maybe you should let it go. You'll destroy yourself in court. She's Still's mother. Still her mother? That phrase cut me like glass. What kind of mother gambles while her child dies on a bathroom floor? Rachel's family was worse. They wouldn't take my calls at all. To them, I was the villain. The bitter ex-husband twisting tragedy into a weapon. I saw their posts online, cousins and aunts defending her, calling me obsessed, toxic, unstable. It was family loyalty weaponized, loyalty to Rachel no matter what she'd done. And yet a question haunted me: what if the roles were reversed? Would my family defend me no matter what? Or had blood already proved weaker than convenience? I found my answer one night when my sister finally called back. Look, she said, voice trembling, I can't testify against Rachel, I just can't. Gone, nothing we do will change that. So you'd rather protect Rachel than fight for her, I asked. Her silence was the answer. I hung up before the static in my chest turned into screams. But allies appear in unexpected places. 2 weeks later, I sat in a coffee shop with the sleepover mom again. Her hands trembled as she pushed a flash drive across the table. What's this? I asked. Everything, she whispered. The doorbell footage, the texts, even the audio of her threatening me. I stared at the drive like it was radioactive. This wasn't just evidence, it was a confession. Proof that Rachel wasn't just negligent, she was manipulative, dangerous. The mom's eyes filled with tears. I can't carry this alone anymore, it's killing me, please use it. Grips her hand, the first genuine human contact that didn't feel like pity. You're not alone, not anymore. That night, I loaded the files on my laptop. I watched the doorbell video again and again. Rachel's voice slurred but sharp, full of venom. If you testify, I'll make your life hell. Hearing it in her own voice, seeing her face twisted with rage, it was more powerful than any medical record. It was the truth, raw and undeniable. I burned 3 copies, one for CPS, one for the DA. Truth, though, has a strained cost. The next week, CPS investigator Regina showed up at my door. She carried a folder, her expression grave. We've completed our investigation, she said, and we found evidence of medical neglect. She placed the folder on my kitchen table. Inside were photos of Rachel's apartment, empty wine bottles, gambling receipts, clutter everywhere, no food in the fridge, no medications in sight. Her words were flat, bureaucratic, but they hit like gunfire. This constitutes child neglect under state law. We will be documenting this formally. For the first time, an official agency had written it down. Rachel killed, not in those exact words, but close enough. I felt my throat tighten, so that means criminal charges. Gina shook her head. Not necessarily, it's a civil finding, but it supports your lawsuit and it will stand on record. Not enough, never enough, but it was something. That same week, Rachel filed her countersuit: emotional distress, defamation, harassment. She wanted $200,000. Her lawyer, Edward, painted me as a vindictive ex who had turned my daughter's death into a crusade. He said I was harassing Rachel, destroying her reputation, making her life unbearable. The judge dismissed most of it, but not before ordering that all communication between us had to go through attorneys. It should have been a win, but to me it felt like another wall between me and the truth. The fracture lines deepened when Rachel showed up at the funeral director's office drunk, screaming that I was trying to bankrupt her with the casket costs. My mom's face went pale, my brother looked at the floor. And still no one spoke, no one confronted her. The silence of family loyalty was louder than her screams. But then the confession came. It was Rachel who confessed, she never would. It was her own cousin, a woman named Melissa. Melissa called me one night out of the blue, her voice hushed. I can't keep my mouth shut anymore. Rachel told us that night at the casino. She bragged about ignoring your calls, said you were being dramatic, said you'd do anything to make her look bad. I froze, my pulse hammering in my ears. She admitted that to you. Yes, to all of us, but nobody will say it. They're too scared of her, too scared of being cut out. Melissa's voice cracked. I'll testify if I have to, but you didn't hear it from me, okay? I whispered thank you even as my chest caved in, because her words confirmed what I already knew. Rachel wasn't ashamed, she was proud. The next day, I leaned across his desk, eyes fierce. We're building momentum, witnesses, evidence, CPS findings, we're close, but you need to stay steady, don't give her any ammunition. Easier said than done. Every time I saw Rachel smirking in court, every time I read her post twisting the truth, I wanted to break. But then I remembered Melissa's voice. She bragged about ignoring your calls. And the fire inside me hardened into steel. The DA called again. We're still reviewing for negligent homicide. The problem is intent. We have to prove she knew her actions could cause death. I almost laughed. She had the insulin in her purse. She ignored 52 calls. What more do you need? But the DA was unmoved. We'll need airtight testimony. Testimony, the word echoed. And I knew what it meant. The moment was coming when I would have to sit on a stand under oath and pour every wound into the open. That night I sat at its grave. The grass was still patchy, the headstone cold under my hand. I whispered, they won't protect her forever. I'll make them see, I'll make them all see. And for the first time, the static in my chest went quiet, not because I was healed, but because I was ready. But Rachel wasn't done, she never was. 2 weeks later, she showed up at the sleepover mom's house again, this time not just with threats, but with something darker. The mom called me sobbing. She said if I testify, she'll take my kids, she'll call CPS on me, she said she knows people. And then she sent me the clip, another doorbell recording, Rachel's voice dripping with venom. You think you can take me down? Watch what happens to your family. The DA added witness tampering charges within hours. Rachel's lawyer scrambled, tried to spin it as drunken nonsense. But the truth was there on tape. And I realized then Rachel wasn't just fighting me, she was fighting reality itself. Courtrooms aren't designed for closure, they're designed for procedure, rules, motions, objections, chess pieces on a board. But when the jury returned, when 12 strangers said out loud what I'd been screaming inside for months, it felt like a damn finally cracked. Liable for wrongful deaths. Rachel's face went white, then red, then twisted with fury. She screamed it wasn't fair that I'd turned everyone against her. The judge had to threaten contempt before she shut up. The damages awarded were meaningless, $75,000 from a woman with no money to her name. But it wasn't about money, it was about truth on the record. Truth carved into the system like stone. Rachel Beckett chose gambling over her daughter's life. 2 weeks later, the DA called again. She's agreed to a plea deal, he said. Misdemeanor child endangerment, 2 years probation, addiction counseling, community service. No jail, no felony, a slap on the wrist. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, but reminded me, she admitted guilt, that admission locks her into liability forever. She can't rewrite the story now. He was right, as hollow as it felt, her guilty plea was a confession, and confessions, once written into law, don't disappear. For months after the trial, I wandered through life like a ghost. Work became mechanical, meals tasteless, nights long. My therapist kept me tethered. Week after week, she asked me to imagine what winning actually looked like. Not revenge, not Rachel in handcuffs, but something sustainable, something that would give some memory meaning. First, I couldn't answer. My head was still full of hospital machines and courtroom transcripts, but gradually a vision took shape, protecting other kids, making sure no one else had to stand over a hospital bed whispering promises they couldn't keep. Started small, I spoke at a local diabetes support group. My voice shook, my palms sweated, but I told them story. I told them about the backup insulin, the 30-minute window, the 52 ignored calls. Parents cried, some took notes. One mom hugged me afterward and said, you saved my son tonight, we'll never forget backups again. That night, for the first time since died, I slept without nightmares. Soon I was meeting with advocacy groups, community centers. Even the insulin pump manufacturer flew me out to speak to their safe team. They updated their caregiver materials with story, at the bottom in tiny print developed in memory of. I cried when I saw it, my little girl's name tied to change. Rachel, meanwhile, unraveled. She violated probation by sneaking back into a casino. Caught on camera, hauled into county jail for 30 days. When I saw her in handcuffs, I expected satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. Her life was already destroyed. No prison term could make it worse. I passed her once at the grocery store. She looked smaller, thinner, her clothes rumbled. She tried to speak, but I turned my card and walked away. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't burn. I felt nothing. That nothing was my victory. I poured my energy into building something we'd be proud of. With the diabetes support group, we created a scholarship fund to provide backup supplies for families who couldn't afford them. Within the first month, we raised over $5,000, enough to outfit 23 families with emergency kits. Each kit carried a bright orange label in memory of stay prepared, stay safe. Parents hugged their children as they read it, and in those hugs, I found fragments of healing. But healing isn't the same as forgetting. I still have scars. Nights when the static returns, when I see on that bathroom floor in my dreams. Days when anger flares at the sight of a casino commercial. Taught me to live with it, not fight it. To accept that grief doesn't shrink, it just becomes a part of you, a shadow you learn to walk alongside. Some days I still collapse at her grave, whispering apologies. Other days I stand tall and tell her, we're helping kids, baby, your name is saving lives. Both versions of me are real, both will always exist. What I've learned is this, family loyalty means nothing if it protects lies. The only loyalty that matters is to the truth and to the innocent who can't defend themselves. Rachel hid behind loyalty, her family, her lies, her denial, but the truth broke through anyway, it always does. Didn't get the chance to grow up, to braid her best friend's hair again, to walk across a graduation stage, to live the life she deserved. But her story now carries weight. It's a warning, a lesson, a reminder that neglect isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like denial. Sometimes it looks like luck. Sometimes it looks like a mother with a purse full of insulin who refuses to leave the table. That scar will never fade, but neither will the lesson. And so when I sit at my kitchen table surrounded by the binders, the timelines, the evidence, I don't see just tragedy anymore. I see survival, I see legacy. I see the father I became, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I'll leave you with this if you're still listening. What does loyalty mean to you? Would you protect the person who caused the harm, or would you fight for the truth no matter how ugly? Because in the end, truth is all we have. And sometimes telling it out loud is the only way to keep the people we love alive in memory, if not in body. If story moved you, if it made you question, if it made you feel, then I ask you to share it. Comment below, tell me what you think loyalty should mean, and don't forget to subscribe because more stories like this deserve to be told. For always